And yeah, so we're live. Yeah, so it's Sam and Ethan. We're just Ethan interested in the local support project, and we're just sort of chatting about you know, the software and how that could be used in different contexts. So just yeah, ask away, Ethan. How can I help you?
I'm thinking about, because now you currently support your community, so I was thinking about maybe we can use the same software to support maybe a community from like another country. In my case, that will be Chengdu in China. So I was thinking whether that is actually feasible, because previously I actually had some similar ideas about how you actually introduce this kind of directory to allow people to easily navigate about these organizations, but I don't really have the time at that. I didn't really have the time to implement it then, but now since I'm on break, so I thought maybe I can start on this project. And because I was taking the CS169 part 2, so I just do Agile Ventures. So I thought that, and I got exposed to LocalSupport as I was navigating on the website. So I thought that's very similar to the thing that I actually want to implement myself. So perhaps I guess like perhaps I can start by just contributing to this project and see whether actually we can use this. We can apply the similar ideas to like my community as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a great idea. It's that's exactly how, you know, things move forward sometimes, is that rather than everybody completely recreating things from scratch, you know, that we build on top of them. Of course, sometimes it's easier to build something exactly from scratch, you know, that is exactly the way you want it. But I think, yeah, I'm a big fan of building on other things. But so, yeah, I mean, you've had a look through the local support software, and you know, the two main functions here that we've got, which are about organizations themselves and then also the volunteers. And it's I mean, the big thing that we've tried to emphasize throughout the development of the software is trying to make it very usable in terms of for the actual organizations to take ownership of their, you know, so there's a group, and we may have added them from, you know, the public records in that group, but so we've got this, you know, this is my organization. The idea that you can kind of come and say, and Google does this as well, I think, you know, this is my organization, and then, you know, create an account and then be able to edit the category and take over and update the contact information. Because this is the problem, even with the government records, which are supposed to be updated every year, although they're not necessarily, they quickly go out of date. And so, yeah, we're really sort of focused on trying to maintain an up-to-date directory of all of the, you know, non-profit work that's going on in this one area. Yeah.
I actually have a question regarding like this functionality. So just now you mentioned that like if, let's say, the organization actually found about the community network online, so they can easily declare the ownership, right? But what will happen after that? So they will edit the information, and do you actually think, because to me, like, one of the things about these kind of organizations is that you actually want to promote this interactivity between maybe the volunteers and the organizations.
Right.
So that is to say that you actually want people to discover how maybe people from their neighborhood actually get involved in these organizations.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I guess the idea. Oh, go on.
So I was thinking, like, maybe is this considered a new functionality? That is to say, like, after maybe the organizations, after they declare the ownership and are able to edit the pages, maybe we can include some functionalities that allow like others to interact with the organizations besides merely displaying the information.
Absolutely. Well, and that's something so we work with our client that we work is Voluntary Action Harrow Cooperative here in the UK, and that's something that they would like to see, that you know, the possibility that they've talked about, you know, adding forums, adding the possibility for discussion, you know, for more sort of community dialogue. Yeah, at the moment the site is very simple. Once you've taken ownership of your organization, we've got actually our very own Agile Ventures non-profit here. You can edit it. You can, you know, put all sorts of information in there to try and attract people to it. You can create a volunteer opportunity, you know, and then other people can browse and find that. But there's, yeah, at the moment the site doesn't really support, there doesn't really provide much framework for, you know, interaction with, you know, between communities or members of the public and those those organizations. I mean, if we look at the, I wonder if I've written it up. So we've got, if we look at the pivotal tracker, certainly one of the things that the client has talked about, does we have to talk about forums? Not that one, we'll just chat. There we go. Am I in the right channel here? This is LocalSupport. Yes, I mean, it's I say it's something that they've talked about. Here we go. Yeah. I mean, there's an extent partly to which we've kind of, I think, held back from that as it being a sort of a big next step, but it's
yeah,
I forget, there's a particular group now that I forget the name of, that there's sort of like a particular group within Harrow that have you know, they're like a core of very active non-profit organizations, and I think, oh, I thought they were called the Forum or something, and I'm not finding it in there, and maybe it's not, but we've got all these things written up in the Agile Ventures project support notes in here, and we see the client every week and so on. But yeah, I mean, if that's the kind of thing that you were interested in developing, you know, we would love to work with you, and you know, that would be something that would, you know, work well for you, and then we could, and that's the beauty of, rather than both doing our things separately, it was, if we can collaborate, then we get the benefits from that. But so we've got all of the client meetings in here. I thought it was the Harrow Community Forum. Yeah, oh, there we go. That's use mailing lists. LocalSupport. Okay, VCS Forum, that's the one. Let's have a look there at this one. Got discussion of the forum. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I think that they, yeah, there was talk about creating like a sort of maybe sort of premium members within the community who would then get access to more features and functionality, like having a discussion environment and so on. Yeah, so definitely something we're interested in.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing I would say is that although it might seem like a relatively, you know, the existing functionality is relatively simple and straightforward, sort of getting that set up and being able to support it reliably and have all the tests pass and so on, and have a good sort of development flow is actually, the functionality might seem quite simple, but actually keeping that all running you know, managing the submissions from open source developers around the world and so on is sort of non-trivial. So in some ways, I would probably suggest to you that rather leaping directly into you know, building the new functionality is getting the base site kind of working in the way that you want it, and getting that set up and so on. And then,
that was my thinking too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So, and then you were saying in the hangout before, you were saying like maybe one thing to look into is whether there are you know, lists or indices or directories, existing directories in China of the kind of organizations that you want to list. So that's definitely something to look into. When we started, we found this. I mean, if you look back through the early meeting notes, you can see. But there's the we have the Charities Commission in the UK, and so they have, you know, and they have a search thing. You can search for a charity. But you can, the advanced search, so you can, let me go, like, can we select specific area so we can look for, oh, there we go, we can look for, yeah, the specific area, so we get the area. This is maybe improved since we used it before, and let's just do that search there. So we get this, yeah, so they've got 632 charities, and it says like, yeah, so it gives you the first 500 results, like so, and yeah, I think this is actually improved, but they don't have a map. I mean, you can get lots and lots of information about, you know, the individual people's, you know, financials and all this, that, and the other. But so they don't provide any sort of API, and they don't provide like a download. I mean, this is all like, you know, legally that they're required to make this information available, but they, you know, that they only make it available in a certain form. So it was then to the Charities Commission, and it was charities data, charities database. What was the? I now can't remember the name of the organization that we got that data from initially. So there's another organization that had, if we go back to the very early meetings, probably find it, let's see, who had basically created an API around, you can actually see the, you can listen to the audio recording of the very first information sort of chats that we had. We've been doing this with these groups over the last couple of years, and we've tried to document, you know, everything, like the entire process of like working with the organization and so on, as sort of to be is that sort of helpful for them. And I can't for the life of me remember the name of the.
I guess it's fine because.
Yeah, no, I don't need to find it now.
So you're saying that there's no like API provide or access to this kind of database.
Yeah,
so
yes.
That is to say we have to rely on some kind of scraping, right?
Well, indeed, and yes, and in fact, so I've remembered it. So it's open charities.
And,
so this is the one.
One
so
good thing, because I previously have experience with writing spiders, like specifically for scraping this kind of information. So I guess it's fine if even if I do not find an API specifically for accessing maybe this kind of information in China, I can write a spider. But my concern is that after, even if I get the data, then what's the next step for us?
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess I will just jump back to say, there's a reasonable question there. So for us, you know, these guys, the official government database didn't provide an API. The open charities, so they do, and so we could have started scraping that, but the open charities had already scraped it, and so they do provide an API, although there are some shortcomings with it. But what they particularly provide is they provided a download. So what we ended up setting up initially, and I'm just seeing if I've got the local support software here. I don't know. You may. I'm just a real stickler for. I love to like reference the specific thing. So I love going to the exact website. So it's partly for the you know, you'll forgive me for this. But so within local support, we end up we wrote all this stuff to parse the CSV file that we dumped. So we end up with, if we look in, it's not the most wonderful code in the world, but organization.rb there. So we've where's it gone? Yeah. So we've got these, you know, all these import statements here, which basically work. You can actually see, I think we have our, there we go. Yes. So this was the data that we, you know, pulled out of that open charities. And then there's was code to pull that in. And the reason that we were getting that is, you know, the client was saying in the first instance, it's important like that we have some number of, you know, charities that you can see something in there. We've also got actually with this, you see the smaller dots and the larger dots, and the larger ones are the ones that have been updated more recently. Now, we pulled that data from these guys like 2 or 3 years ago. And so I think a fair amount of this, you know, has gradually gone out of date, but, you know, the more active charities have been updating their information in here. And so that's fine. I mean, when we first started the project, I was thinking, oh, we need to have some way to automatically pull new data from the government database. I think that would be nice. I mean, or, you know, that's a whole nother kind of project of like keeping the data current. But I don't know that it's turned out to be so important. I mean, that would sort of be nice, but really what this is, the way this is mainly being used, or I think the public use it to a certain extent, is that the organization that this Voluntary Action Harrow, I mean, for them, they're kind of using it as a way of managing and representing their understanding of the non-profits that are operating. So the more active ones updating the things has worked reasonably well. Not that it wouldn't be nice to be always pulling in the latest data, but they've sort of, you know, more, I think what became more important than keeping this data, you know, automatically up to date was the introduction of the volunteer aspect. And now what we are doing, what we're just about to deploy is there's a group in the UK called Do It. And they're a national register of volunteer opportunities. And they do have an API, and we've just signed a contract with them. And so we have access to their API, and we're now pulling out of their database volunteer opportunities to come into here, into this view. And so that's ended up being our big focus. So that's something that you know, you might, it depends how important the volunteering side is for you. We may ultimately change this around so that the volunteering is the home page, and then the directory is the second thing. But what will work well in your community? Another question. In terms of coming back to your original question, which is what's the next step after having pulled the data in? I mean, really, I would say in some ways the key thing is to be working with one of these umbrella organizations, maybe. Is there somebody in Chengdu who's already responsible for trying to like promote volunteering and nonprofits in Chengdu?
I would have to check out on that because I just returned to Chengdu. Yeah.
Sure.
So
no problem.
Okay.
I mean, for us, our dialogue with that organization in Harrow, which is the Volunteer Action Harrow Cooperative, has been very helpful in trying and make the software really actually have some positive impact in the local area, which is, I assume, is what you're interested in doing, is you want to try and help have a positive impact in the local area. Yeah.
Yes. So you are suggesting that I should probably look for some organization who can help me maybe advertise the websites?
Yeah. I mean, because I think not that that's a requirement. I mean, I think in some ways, merely just getting the software set up and putting some data, even if you put it in by, even if you can't find an existing list, even if you're just putting 2 or 3 organizations that you know about in by hand, I would say that the process of using this software and helping us convert it, so you'd want to have like a different name there and logo saying Chengdu Community Network or what have you. I would say that that's a perfectly meaty chunk of programming work in terms of making sure the software is reskinnable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we've tried to make it generic, but I'm sure that there's things that have crept in that to do with the logo and this, that, and the other that are kind of,
and also
go on.
Also about the internationalization, I think, because
absolutely.
Because so that's also another aspect, I think.
Yes. So I'd say that the internationalization and the making sure that it can support a generic, that like what we would love to have, is that you can set up the software, and then, for example, if I log in as the admin, so that you logged into the admin, and within the admin, we've got various things that you can sort of, but if you had like a site settings thing and you could upload the logo, for that, or, and sort of change the language, or most of the pages, actually, we have these sort of pages like about us. This is directly editable. So you can just, edit that and hopefully you can just write that directly in Chinese or what have you. But yeah, I think that would be, a very, it'd be very valuable for us as a project to do the internationalization / generalization. And I think it would be, a great way for you to become familiar with the software and learn the ins and outs. And then that would put you in a great position to then build new functionality on the top, if you know what I mean.
Okay, sure. But let's say if I completed the internationalization, there's another problem, that is to say, it sort of became a separate project, if you understand what I mean, because maybe the languages and the support may be drastically different, that it no longer represent the like the code base may be like very different. But at that time, how do you manage to keep the 2 code bases in sync?
Well, I mean, I think that would, there's always the possibility that ultimately once one decides these 2 things have to go separate ways. I think the interesting thing there is that, I presume you're quite familiar with GitHub.
Yeah.
I mean, if you fork the project, you can go off and do your own custom things in your own fork, and it could become a separate thing. I guess what I would certainly be trying to do is, in any situation where you were, we need the site to be this way, and if you're changing a view or what have you, or this, that, and the other, is, we'd work together to see if we couldn't make the code generic rather than specific.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that I think in itself is an interesting challenge. And Rails internationalization, it's not a new problem. Lots of people do it.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So I think there's, it would be an interesting thing to work on together. But if at some point that you said, well, I really need to, say that you would, particularly if you'd started working with an umbrella volunteer group, and they were saying, oh, we really need to look at like this, and it needs to have this, and ultimately, this is open source software, and you're free to do with it as you want. You can take your fork, and if you just want to change it this way and that way, you can do that, and you can deploy that software, and that's that's all good. At the same time, of course, to the extent that the software diverges, if we add features in our fork, then if they're diverged, it's less easy for you to take advantage of the fixes and upgrades and things that we deliver. So it's there's a phrase we say in England, in swings and roundabouts. So you kind of pay a cost to, by keeping the code base together, you get the benefit of the thing, but then maybe there's less flexibility. But by going separately, you get more flexibility, but you get less support from the the people who are all putting in. So you can sort of see, we have here, we'll click on the Agile Ventures logo here. This is all of the people who've been contributing to the local support projects over the years. And there's a lot of work that's gone. I mean, I'm not, there's some of the parts of the code that I'm not proud of, but we've got a lot of experience supporting and delivering this software. And yeah, we'd love to collaborate with you on seeing if we can make the software have value in your part of the world.
Sure. So I guess I'll just start by how do I say it? I'll just start by looking through the code base and do maybe some localization. And after I get familiar with the code base, I'll see whether we can work together to adding new functionality and stuff.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, that sounds great. So I mean, and the way in is basically, to fork the code base. What I would particularly do if I were you is, as well as looking through the code base, which is always good to do, is having forked it, is try doing or actually the forking is the board, is try doing a deployment of it on Heroku. Are you familiar with Heroku?
My deployment, right?
Yeah. Just so I mean, we've had various people have done. I mean, you don't have to get a domain name or anything, but if you just do like Heroku create, and you do that Chengdu volunteer volunteer, you can have like a Chengdu volunteers .herokuapp.com, and so just we can help you do that. I think the particular thing that would be interesting to explore is just take a deployment of it, and without making any changes to the code base, just going in as admin yourself and editing the pages, right? Because you get like the edit functionality here. You can just change what all this is, and you might say, "Oh, this is an awful interface. We want to fix that." Anyway, but see how much localization you can do without making any changes to the code, and then kind of you'll end up with, oh, okay, well, I was able to get this much to work, but I encountered this problem, and I can't change the logo and whatever. And then what we can do is we can turn those into tickets. What we can do is we make an epic in here.
What do you mean by an epic?
So an epic is a concept in the pivotal tracker of, you can see the volunteer epic, and the volunteer epic, it links together all of the stories related to volunteering.
I see.
So what I'll do is I'll add you to. Have you already got a pivotal tracker account? Let me add you to here so you can start adding.
Yeah, I have already created an account. Yeah. So it's the same email address.
Same email as from your. Let me.
Slack.
Get you from Slack. Yeah, that's a Gmail. Pop you in there. And what we'll do is so that you got an invitation sent to you there. I'll create an internationalization epic here. Slash localization. So
actually, I can think of a concern internet. So notice that in the homepage, right, you actually have the Google Map, the small Google Map.
Yes.
But in the case of China, we do not support Google Map, so we have to find another local provider. So the thing about this, the problem with this is that maybe what we need to do is to abstract away the part about Google Map.
Sure.
So instead of, I'm not sure whether in the code base you are just using Google Map directly, but if that's the case, what we need to do with the internationalization is to create an abstraction of map. So after so that when you do localization, you'll choose to use whether Google Map or on another like local provider. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very interesting way to go as well. Yes. So I mean, certainly, I think our use of Google Maps is somewhat, the sort of, it's somewhat integrated into the code, but that would be the kind of thing that would be interesting to explore. But so I think as we have these ideas, so you see now I've created the epic, and so I've added a chore to explore Google Maps alternative because it doesn't work in China. And so what you can do in the epic is any ideas that you have of things that might need to happen. If you just click on the add view stories there, and then you can just see we're in the internationalization localization. So I might be putting here, it's like explore supporting different logo, like so. And what I'm doing is I'm putting these things in as chores to begin with, rather than features, because we don't have a sort of client explicitly requesting them at the moment. And I think the important thing about all these things is that, the danger is that one takes one individual element of these problems and then dives very deep in that without first getting a kind of more of an overview of what are the various things that we might need to do. And so if we can sort of start by just listing all of those up, and then we can have a little bit of conversation about each one, and then we can work out what's the most strategic way to approach the whole project. I think that's a good way to go. Yeah,
I agree with that.
Nice one. Cool. So you should have an invite to the calendar there. I guess one of the big things ultimately when we get to code is we're very strong on the behavior-driven, test-driven development. Is that something that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, maybe I just need to get more familiar with the syntax, but the general idea, I'm fine with that.
Sure.
So the TDD, BDD stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and that's but yeah, particularly, we'll be very happy to work with you and maybe pair program as appropriate, and give you comments on pull requests and so on, to try and, what we're keen to do is, I don't know if you remember what was just being said in the Hangout. There's this other project called the Agile Bot, which is, so now you remember seeing that we had this little link pop up for the Hangout that we're in now. So the project that Sam Pretty and I were talking about is Agile Bot. That's the bot that posts those links. So we're just, making some tweaks to that. And this is, it's existing. It's another project called WhoBot, which probably has its own tests, and we're adding scripts to it, but it's not really tested yet. And it's sort of, I'm a little bit worried about the maintenance, but I think sometimes when you're starting off a project, just to kind of get things, to see things working, it's reasonable to work without tests. The big objective with the whole, local support project is for software that can be maintained and supported long term. So rather than just making little changes and hoping and praying that it all works, is doing it within a really disciplined software engineering framework, and having all the tests to run. So I was saying to you, like, maybe try a deploy of it yourself. What you might well do is also see if you can get the tests all to run locally for you. And I think probably you've got, you said you were looking through the wiki pages, so you're finding your way around there.
Yeah, I'm getting started setting up on the Mac.
Yeah, and so you've got a Mac. Okay, cool, which I'm also on, so that makes sense. So we've got, in particular, I think we've got a relatively up-to-date, the OS X install page. Just let me, and that, that's the other thing is just, we've got these two channels, which I think you probably already worked out. So we've got this one here, has got all of our automated notifications from the pull requests and pivotal tracker and everything, and that's sort of like a general one. And then we've got this specific one for the chat. So anytime you're stuck, absolutely feel free to, I mean, often people, they're like, oh, I was working on it for 4 hours and I couldn't get it to work. And we were like, why didn't you ask for help? And they're like, no, I have to suffer in silence. So there's no reason to suffer in silence. Just, shout out here, and we'll help you out with whatever you need.
Okay, sure.
Cool beans. Any other questions or anything else I can help you with?
I think no. I'll just get started now. Yeah.
Sure. Yes. My apologies for too much. I'm a chatty person. So always feel free to say. Always feel free, but you should always feel free to say. You can say, "Stop talking to me," and I will just stop talking, and it's always good. Lovely. Well, it's lovely to meet you, Ethan. Yeah, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
Okay, sure. Bye.
All right. Bye for now. Take care.
Okay.